Welcome inside the locker room for Fantasy Football Week 10 review here downtown Toronto at beautiful Shark Club on Yonge and Dundas. I'm Chris Meany alongside Mike Omalai. We got Essen McLaren here. We have Shauna Worker here at Dundas. We have John Collins. All of us, of course, writing for the Locker Room Fantasy Sports. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to talk a little fantasy football. But first, Shauna, tee us up with some of the things that you guys have going on. Obviously, you're playing a football game tonight, Miami, Tampa Bay. But what other stuff is going on here tonight?
Definitely Shark Club Dundas is the place to be on a Monday. We have a whole bunch of special event features going on. We have $3.99 Budweiser tonight on draft. We also have $3.99 frozen sangrias. We also have $9.99 steak sandwiches. So definitely if you're looking for a good time, Monday nights, I would definitely say Shark Club Dundas is the place to be.
Perfect, yeah. Thanks, Shauna. So we'll talk a little fantasy football, and we'll start, obviously, with last night's Sunday night game. Drew Brees and the Saints playing the Dallas Cowboys, and they put Dallas in their place. They ran the ball all over them. They had a record 40 first downs. They had over 600 yards. All their running backs had a day, and Ingram led the way with 145. They all had a touchdown. Can we expect this kind of running back performance in New Orleans from now on?
I tell you what, I'm not expecting it from Mark Ingram again. I can promise you that.
You didn't know Ingram was going to go off this week?
You know what? Not even ranked this week, and he hadn't been for a couple of weeks after a few mistakes of doing that. I'm not sold on Mark Ingram. I won't be. I will say that he's on the go now, and he's getting rolling. It's nice to see him in the lineup, but I'd expect really to go back a little bit to Darren Sproles and Pierre Thomas doing work. Really nice to see Sproles get on track last night more than anything else.
Because there was some concern for Sproles owners that if they had him, if they were going to start him or not. Now there shouldn't be no concern anymore, right? For people that have Darren Sproles, should they be worried about putting him in their lineup now, or?
I don't think so. You know, you saw that game. You know, he's such a remarkable talent. He could catch the ball. He's so electric in the backfield. He's so much speed. I'm more concerned, like you said, Mark Ingram. I'm a little more concerned with him. Even Pierre Thomas. When you got three guys, it's hard to get production, but I got to go with the guy that's the most electric, and that's Darren Sproles. He's the fastest. That's the most catches, and
that's the thing to watch about Darren Sproles a little bit moving forward is that there are that many mouths to feed, right?
Yeah.
That's what we saw a couple of weeks ago. Now, last week he left with concussion, but a couple of weeks ago he played 18 snaps. He really hasn't been playing more than 20 all season. So, yeah, I'm all in on Sproles. I think we're all pretty happy with how that performance went, but he's not going to face the Dallas Cowboys without Sean Lee every week, and he's maybe going to get back down to being the second or third guy in that running back pecking order in terms of snaps. So I'm excited about Sproles. You're going to have him in the lineup, absolutely, but let's not expect this type of a week every night. That's all.
Yeah, we need to be smart about this, too. Like those other guys, how often have we tried to trust them, thought they'd continue these big weeks after having one, and they never do. Haven't yet once. So you can't jump all over these guys. You pay the price way too often.
I mean, Pierre Thomas, no doubt about it. This guy is going to have some monster weeks for the rest of the season. I mean, I just can't trust it, you know, that three-headed monster, like you said. It's just too unpredictable for me.
Now, just going to go off the board a little bit, still talking with the Saints. So, Drew Brees, this is a guy who, if you have him on your fantasy team, you're winning weeks. And people always talk, not everyone, but a lot of people for the most part like to draft running backs in the first few picks. Let's talk for a second about some guys that are not performing. Sproles is one of them. Ray Rice, one of them. Running backs that are picked high. People wondering if they should have grabbed a quarterback.
Sure. So if you drafted Ray Rice or Trent Richardson or Steven Jackson for that matter in the first round or the back end of it, then yeah, you should have drafted a quarterback. However, I think it's examples like that that make loading up on depth at those more scarce positions early make sense. Yeah, Drew Brees is going to win you a few weeks, and he won me a matchup last night. That's fantastic. But having those nice high floor running backs that you're picking up in the first round can really anchor your week and get you started. Brees can't do anything for you if you're rolling out Trent Richardson and Ray Rice every week. That's why you want to have some depth at that position.
Okay, so let's talk about those two guys, Trent Richardson. Another dud of a week, really. What's going on with Richardson?
You know, he just, you know, he's still not, I guess, maybe not fully healthy. He's got some little banged up. He's still a new member in Indianapolis, still getting involved. The Colts, they don't have the strongest O-line either. You know, I feel like he's just not that. He doesn't fit the system. I feel like Trent Richardson needs to be with like a Rex Ryan, a ground and pound kind of team that runs their throat, and Indianapolis is really not that team.
Well, to be fair, they were out of it before the game even really got going. So
They weren't out of it last week,
had to throw the ball a little
or the
bit,
week
though.
before, or frankly, with fairness to Trent Richardson, he's been in games in his career and he's still not getting 4 yards a pop. So I'm not writing the guy up because I'm not there every day. I don't know what he's doing, but you can only get by so far on less than 4 yards a carry. They got to start looking at Donald Brown a little more. I mean, that guy is electric. When you look at the difference between Brown running the ball and Richardson, it's obvious. Now, he didn't carry it that well last week, but I think he had 5 catches for 64 yards, got himself in the end zone, and he really got the offense moving, and that's a reason enough to be behind Brown. Not so excited about Trent Richardson, and that kind of a performance makes me worry more about Trent, I think.
So if you're a guy that has Brown and Trent on your team, who are you going to start? Who are you going to go for? You can start one of them.
From basic, performance, you got to go Donald Brown because, like you said, this guy can catch the ball, and I think moving forward, the Colts are going to want to keep doing that. They're going to want to they want the ball in Andrew Luck's hands, and I think they're starting to realize that they need the ball in Luck's hands. The way they've been performing the last couple of weeks, you saw in Houston, they try to get Trent Richardson involved early, and then before you know, they're down 21-zip. The second half, it's all Andrew Luck. They need the ball in this man's hands, especially. They don't. It's tough to win this league. They need the ball in Luck's hands. I think Donald Brown gives us the best opportunity through the passing game.
In fantasy, so often we all want to go by name. Start the guy with the big name. We've all done that with Trent Richardson. It doesn't work anymore. We're in week 10, playoffs on the line. You got to go with Donald Brown, the guy who continues to be the biggest producer every week.
However, and I absolutely agree, I'm on board with that. The rest of the season, I'm probably certainly bringing those two guys a lot closer in my rankings, if not putting Donald Brown ahead of them. Let's hope you're starting somebody a little more reliable than Donald Brown as well, right? Let's not make the conversation about that. He's going to get you maybe 8 to 10 touches a week. It's not that exciting, but if I'm faced with that coin flip, I think we're all in on Donald Brown right now.
But there's been a few running backs out there, injuries, a few busts, that sometimes you have to start a guy like Donald Brown, maybe ahead of Trent Richardson, a guy that hasn't been, we talked a little bit about him, hasn't been great this year, Ray Rice. 18 rushes, 30 yards. Again, here we are. We talked about Ray Rice last week. We're talking about him again. What's going on with Ray Rice?
I don't know how you give Rice 25 touches if you're the Baltimore Ravens, I'll tell you that. Now, I understand there's a little bit of a concern there with their offensive line, but I don't know how in that game yesterday, Rice manages to get 25 touches when he carries it 18 times for 30 yards. He's under 2 yards a pop for the second week in a row, and they're feeding him. Came up big in overtime, but I can't seem to understand it.
Yeah, for Ray Rice, I feel like I can't understand it either. This guy is constantly getting involved. I mean, I'm more comfortable starting a guy like Ray Rice than Trent Richardson. Richardson, like I said, just been flat out awful. 5 rushes, 2 yards.
Volume gets to be a concern.
Rice not much better, but he's getting at least the volume, and they're not afraid to use him. PPR a little bit more too because he still catches the ball a bit. But for Ray Rice, the only way I'm starting if you're facing like a bottom 5 rush defense, and he has a couple. I was looking at the schedule. He's got Pittsburgh. He's got New England. Maybe when you play a team like that in the bottom half, maybe let's give Rice a start. But other than that, I don't want to touch him.
I think that's the way you look at it a little bit, right? I can get behind even Richardson. I can get behind Ray Rice. I can probably get behind Steven Jackson, but I'm not going to do it unless it's in a matchup that I really like. Yeah. You're not starting those guys against top-run defenses.
Not a chance.
The minute that you don't start Ray Rice, you're going to get hurt. Yeah. Doesn't that happen all the time?
It happens, but I'm happier with him with 20 points on my bench than with 3 points in my lineup.
I'd rather, I make fun all the time. We talked about Drew Brees earlier. Sort of go back to that, but, you're not sold on having him in the first round. I'm starting to change my tune a little bit. Drew Brees is just so phenomenal. And we talked about these guys like Rice and Richardson that just can't perform. I'm fond of grabbing a guy like Danny Woodhead later on in the 6th round. This guy's 5 TDs in his last 6 games. He gets 10 points. It's not too bad.
You can draft quarterback bust too, though, bro.
Yeah, and to be fair, Woodhead has been a fantastic waiver wire pickup for those of you who do have him, especially in PPR leagues. This guy's got the most receptions for any running back in the league. But going back to some more backs here, and we talked about how we would start Ray Rice maybe against a team like Pittsburgh, who's in the bottom half of, yards per lap. None of the Buffalo Bills running backs seem to do anything. And, we've been pretty high on our website in Spiller throughout the year, and we should have been. But really, he's not doing anything, and neither is Fred Jackson, for the most part.
I went all in on Spiller this week. Wrote a couple of pieces about him, headline start and sit piece with him. I was all in. Doug Marrone comes into the week. He's talking about how their plan is to get more work for Spiller. He's back to health. He's not on the injury report. He's good to go. And they give him 13 touches, fewer than Fred Jackson. He plays half of Jackson's snaps. And then after the game, he says, yeah, it was game plan. So I think it's a little hard to project how much work that guy's going to get, but he's still in my lineup because he can go off.
I read a piece recently with midseason awards, and one of the sections there was guys drafted in the top 40 that you're ready to drop. I listed CJ Spiller in that article. Unfortunately, it was released the week after he
got roasted
had his
for it.
one good week. I was roasted online for this. I was more than happy to see him go out there on Sunday again and post another dud.
Yo, one thing I do want to say, though, no Stevie Johnson looking like this week, so maybe they're going to have to get back to the ground game. I kind of like Fred Jackson and CJ Spiller in that check down game for Buffalo coming into the week. I'm not sour on him yet.
Yeah, for CJ, I think too, he's not fully healthy, and we got to remember that. That kind of limits his value a little bit, but I'm with you on this one. I can't sit this guy because he's just such an electric player, and he can take it to the house at any given moment. And with the Stevie Johnson injury, he should be involved for the most part. There's going to be the odd week he's not going to perform, but I think he's got to live without that.
Okay, let's talk about the Falcons. Like, you want to lead the way? Some of our teams here, they've struggled over the past couple of days. This guy likes the Pats, so he's been good for years. But the Falcons, Roddy White came back, one catch. Steven Jackson having some issues. Matt Ryan, obviously, he's missing some guys. He doesn't look the same. Where do we rate Steven Jackson going forward the rest of the year?
You don't start him. I really don't think you can. He's shown no big sign of promise even. Has been bad week in, week out, had that injury. That was probably the best scenario for fantasy owners. They were able to pick up other guys, plug them in, and they at least got points. Now Steven Jackson's back, you feel like you have to start him, and you get 3 points out of it.
Right, so he had one decent week last week where he had an okay per carry average, but he sandwiched that with games where he's been under 2 yards a pop. I think he had a dozen touches yesterday, 20 yards. You can do a lot better than that kind of an output right now. And until I see things looking better in Atlanta, I'm with you. He's not a start, and neither is Roddy White until maybe those matchups lighten up a bit, weeks 13 to 16.
That's the thing, is it's a wait and see for Roddy White. See if he has a good game where he gets a few catches, gets some yards, and then you plug him in.
For me, he needs to give me at least one pretty good game for me to start Roddy White. I think the Falcons in general, for me, I'm kind of giving them the Ray Rice approach. I need a favorable matchup. I need a bottom defense. If Matt Ryan could play his own defense, I'd start him there because they can't stop anybody. So I need someone like that for me to start a guy like Matt Ryan and some of these Falcons offensive players.
So another big surprise this week, and we're talking about a bunch of backs now that didn't do you any good, but one back who did do you good if you picked him up, Andre Brown. He came back and really surprised me because a lot of reports were saying that Peyton Hillis was going to get the majority of the touches.
And so there's the thing with Andre Brown, right? You gave him that Ray Rice, that Roddy White treatment. You gave him a wait and see, and all of a sudden he gets 30 carries, 31 touches against the Raiders. Part of that was some in-game stuff. Peyton Hillis lost a fumble, and I think that they started looking a little bit more to Andre Brown. Part of it was Eli Manning couldn't throw the ball, and he hasn't been throwing it all that well this season, so that's not a surprise. Shocked to see him get 30 carries this week. He's probably not going to hit that number again this season, but he's going to have high-volume workload every week because, again, that pass game isn't getting it done. I was thinking about this on the way down here. I'd probably trade any of those Giants wide receivers for Andre Brown right now with David Wilson out. I'm thinking he's going to get a lot of work in the ground game. They're going to have to focus on kind of that ground and pound game plan because they're not getting it done throwing the ball. They had another pick six this week. If they want to be in the NFC East, they're going to have to run the ball. I'm behind Andre Brown. I'd probably give up Victor Cruz to get him.
Well, that's the thing. Like the Giants, they're successful when they can run the ball.
Yeah. And we saw that even when Peyton Hillis was a starter, they gave him 20-plus touches.
Yeah.
So I am absolutely huge on Andre Brown. I love him. This is, for me, like a top 15 kind of back. I love the coach talk. Let's give Andre Brown a snap count. That's increased the rush attempts for C.J. Spiller. He gets 13, and Andre Brown's supposed to be on 11. He gets 30. This guy is he's definitely the most talented back. You look at guys like Hillis and Brandon Jacobs, Wilson out for the year. These guys aren't scared to take away touches from Andre Brown. He's the most talented back there. The Giants show in Coughlin, they want to run the football. So Brown is going to get his touches.
I see him in the 15 to 20 a week range for sure. It's funny you mentioned coach speak. We saw a little bit of that with Andre Ellington this week, right? Yeah. PA comes out before the games. He says he's going to go ahead and give him 20 touches. Not just this week, but he says, hey, we're going to give him 20 touches per game for the rest of the season. It feels good. Now, most of us looking at that cautiously kind of thought, that's a bit much. You're giving him 30 snaps a game. You're not going to give him 20 touches. But you certainly expect him to be more involved than he was. Rashard Mendenhall had 14 touches this week. Ellington had 13. Mendenhall loses a fumble. Ellington outgains him by 20 yards. But I don't know. He's probably in that 13 to 15 range, certainly more so than the 18 to 20 range moving forward.
So who do you like better out of the two going forward, though?
I don't want anything to do with Mendenhall. Volume or not, I mean, he's putting the ball on the ground. He's not really getting it in the end zone. Certainly, if I have a choice between the two, I'm taking the more electric back. Same conversation we kind of had with C.J. Spiller. Ellington can make 13 touches work. He might not every week, but if you're needing a flex play out of it, you can do a lot worse than those 13 touches.
All right, so let's talk about some of the quarterbacks. Obviously, we talked about Drew Brees. Let's start with the good before the bad, because Nick Foles, again, I know he didn't get 7 touchdowns, but in 2 games he has 10 touchdowns. He's averaging 317 yards. His completion rate is 73%, and his quarterback rating is 153. That's pretty good. I do no picks in there, and he doesn't have a pick all season. So, and he also hooked up with Riley Cooper again twice. So,
Our boy.
Foles is a guy that, what's going on with him? Still, I feel like I still don't know, and a little bit he thinks he's playing over his head.
Did you see those 3 touchdown throws yesterday?
It's short. He's underthrowing.
He underthrew 2 of them, right? Third one was a beautiful route by Riley Cooper, though, to get to the sideline, but Cooper had to adjust to the ball. Gets himself banged up a little bit. Same thing with Deshaun Jackson. There's no way that goes into the end zone. He's got 16 touchdowns, no picks this season. He tried to throw 2 yesterday. Now, I mean, he's throwing touchdowns and he's putting up yards in a prolific offense, so I like Nick Foles just fine, but maybe he is, like you say, playing a bit over his head right now. I wanted to ask the guys, I was thinking about this on the ride down here as well. If you've got him, are you dealing him? Like, are you trading Nick Foles right now, or are you riding this out?
That's a tough. I mean, for most people who have Nick Foles, you know, they picked him up, so they might have a starting caliber quarterback.
Right.
In one league, I picked up Nick Foles in a league where I had Matt Ryan. I'm starting Foles over Matt Ryan. Let's make that clear, because I'm buying in on Foles. I like him. And you're with the Eagles offense, Chip Kelly, it's a prolific offense. They're constantly throwing the ball nonstop. Even a running back they have like LaShawn McCoy, he gets a lot of receiving yards, so that benefits Nick Foles as well. So I think he's in a great opportunity there in Philly, and I'll continue to ride it out as long as it goes. The trade option,
Yes,
if you have a good quarterback.
Right, if you got Matt Stafford, say, or one of those 4, 5, 6, 7 guys on your team, are you selling high? I'm trying to sell high probably on Nick Foles.
Yeah, obviously you try. I don't know how many guys would jump on this, because I feel a lot of people are probably similar in you and don't think it's going to last all that long. But if an offer does come along, you got to jump all over it, because I don't trust this to last the rest of the year.
To be fair, he does run Chip Kelly's offense better than
Absolutely.
Michael Vick, even though he doesn't have that threat to run, and he has been running a little bit. But with Foles, I mean, the touchdown ratio with 16 to 0, like you're talking, that's a little bit over his head. But I'm with you when you talk about quarterbacks, and you have Matt Ryan, and when you mention, are you going to trade him? I have Peyton Manning. When am I ever going to play Foles over Peyton Manning? Although Manning's ankle's a little
You're going to play him
dumb.
this week pending
He
results of
says
MRI.
he's playing no matter what,
Yeah,
says
no.
Manning. Going forward, it might be when you have a guy like Manning, maybe he rests in the last couple of weeks. Maybe the playoffs are already locked and he rests when it's fantasy championship time. Maybe you want to hang on to a guy like Foles, or you can sell high. It's a good point.
Good catch. Good time of year.
Yeah, that's a great point you just said right there. When you want to win a fantasy championship, you have to be mindful of that. Guys like Peyton Manning, he might have a bye in the final week of the season, so you need to hang on to a guy like Nick Foles or pick a guy like that and have a backup option there. You might need him to win the pride and a whole lot of money, whatever your prize is for your fantasy season.
Yeah, a trophy or something like the league. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the other side. There's a guy in Green Bay that you love.
Yes, I do love Mr. Scott Tolzien, everybody. How about this guy? You know, even Seneca Wallace has a little high on him. This guy started out 5
5 for 5.
5 for 5, not too bad. but you got a Green Bay offense here. You got Jordy Nelson, you got James Jones, and you got Jared Boykin who had a good game. How about him? Third string receiver, third string quarterback. It's a match.
Last week,
It's
right?
a match made in heaven. But Scott Tolzien, let me give you a little stats on this guy. Wisconsin Badger, it's perfect. The guy went to Wisconsin. He's in Green Bay, his hometown.
Case Keenum.
He made his third. He started in Wisconsin in his third year. He set the record for single season completions of 211. In 2010, he beat out Christian Ponder, Andy Dalton, and Colin Kaepernick for the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. Packers might have a little gem on their hands here. I honestly, so I'll settle down a little bit here. But Tolzien, I do like him this week. I do like him. Even a week practice is huge. When you thrust into a game without practice, I think that makes a big difference. When you have the whole week to prepare with these receivers, I think that'll add a ton of value to it.
Right, so I'm worried about the receivers, right? We're getting a little bit over the top on your boy Scott Tolzien. He's not Nick Foles, who I'm starting over whoever you say we might have moving forward, but I'm not totally sure. I don't know. I'm not totally sure what it means for guys, like maybe Jared Boykin, right? You talk about that third stringer effect. He keeps him relevant this week, and I'm just not totally convinced that that's going to be the case moving forward, but I do like his value for the Packers offense in general. He's going to be okay keeping the chains moving. I mean, it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers in there. Had an effect on Eddie Lacy this week, who still had 22 carries, but he only got 60 yards out of him. So keep an eye on Lacy. We still like his workload, and hopefully Tolzien can kind of keep the defense honest moving forward.
All right, so we're about 18 minutes or in, so we're going to tell you now. For those of you just tuning in, if you just are, we're here in Toronto at the Shark Club, beautiful little Shark Club. You'd be so satisfied with this place. They got great TVs around. Of course, they're playing the Monday Night Football game, the 0-8 Bucks and the 4-4 Dolphins. They got some prizes they're going to give away. You can fill out some sheets and all that good stuff. So be sure to check it out.
$3.99 for these bad boys.
$3.99 beers, 38-cent wings. Not too bad. So thanks for taking the time to talk a little Week 10 fantasy football for you. Another quarterback that is back in behind center. Didn't think we'd see him again. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Do we care about that?
I don't. Mikey doesn't care. I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. You know that I talk a lot about Kendall Wright, probably a lot more than I should. This guy only has one touchdown this season. That was like 8 weeks ago. But he's catching a lot of balls. He's been a great PPR asset this season. He's consistently in that 8, 9, 10 target range. He's always leading the Titans in targets. Had 7 catches this week for 78 yards. A lot of those, of course, with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I don't hate him for what he brings to that offense. And, we'll see what happens for the rest of their season. Bad week for Chris Johnson this week, too. But without the fumble, maybe you don't notice it as bad.
Chris Johnson back to his old self, right?
Sounds like it. Yeah, Tennessee Titans, I just don't really trust them that much. Chris Johnson, he's kind of one of those matchup plays for me in a sense.
You're starting this guy, right?
Yeah, you're starting.
You're starting Chris Johnson, obviously.
However, it's going to take a nice game to get him going.
It's getting tougher, too. Pretty tough to start Chris Johnson right now with confidence.
Sure, with confidence.
Yeah.
But it was just last week that we hung around this table and we kind of said, listen, we were all excited about him, is the point. We were all in on this guy after 2 touchdowns. He broke a couple of big runs, and he still has that big play ability. So I like Chris Johnson. You're just not going to see 150 yards every week, but every once in a while he's going to get one to the outside, and we're going to take it to the house. You're going to like that a whole lot, right?
So Tolzien getting the start. Cutler not getting the start. Josh McCown is getting the start for Chicago. He's already been appointed the starter. So this really doesn't mean anything for the big 2 monsters in Chicago.
Not even worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I take Alshon Jeffrey. I'd give just about anything to get my hands on Alshon Jeffrey right now. He had a career high in targets this week. Depending on where you look, Yahoo says he had about 18. The Pro Football Focus says 14 looks. Either way, he's pacing wide receivers. I loved what I saw in that game, both from Cutler and from McCown. They go to Brandon Marshall when Brandon Marshall's open, because that's where I'm going with the football too. But as soon as the opponent shifts coverage to Marshall, he had 3 catches, 61 yards, and a score on that first drive. It's cool. They're just going to look to Alshon Jeffrey. He's 6'3", Marshall 6'4", or something like that. 2 big targets, guys that are going to go up and catch the ball. Not worried about Josh McCown as far as their fantasy value goes at all. We saw it a couple weeks ago, and we probably should have saw it 2 quarters earlier this week.
The monsters at the midway. I'm big on them. Those are 2 beasts. I was kind of disappointed that Josh McCown didn't get the start in that previous week because you got a guy like Cutler coming back, a little banged up, and McCown looked great. For me, he's got that little, the full similarities with the coach. Mark Trestman, this guy's an offensive guru, kind of like how Chip Kelly is. These guys are constantly given opportunities to throw the ball, and they both have electric running backs that catch the ball, so it gives them plus opportunities, which I like.
So a couple quarterbacks that, didn't really do much this week was Colin Kaepernick and Cam. Is that just a case of, great defenses?
Yeah, I think that's what that is. Right now, Cam Newton started 2 of 11 this week. He was really shaky getting going, and he kind of picked it up. With Colin Kaepernick, I think you're kind of looking at a situation where that Carolina Panthers defense is a lot better than we give them credit for. They showed that this week. They're arriving in terms of their playoff contention, I think, but also in terms of the reality of how tough that matchup is against them. With Cap, he also lost Vernon Davis, so I think that's a bit of the product. I'm avoiding Carolina defense where I can. I hope we're going to talk about St. Louis defense in a minute because I'm avoiding them too. But before, I want to point out Mario Manningham came back this week. He played 79% of their snaps, led the team in targets. Now, he only caught 3 balls, but at least until Michael Crabtree comes back, definitely if Vernon Davis misses this week, Crabtree's on your radar, right?
Absolutely. Manningham is a good player.
Manningham, thank you.
I'm on that. I like Manningham. He's a number 2 target now, pretty much, if Vernon Davis has to miss time, like you said. So I'm all about my number 2 options, especially when you got a top corner covering a guy, the number 1 more defensive attention coming down the side, creating some separation. I think Kaepernick could really have some good use for that. But I think, like you said, the Carolina defense, they need to get a ton of credit. 5 straight wins. Ron Rivera has got that defense going.
So here, I'll do a couple pieces here, Locker Room Fantasy Sports. John, you're going to have some touches and targets this week. Mikey O knows, which we do Sunday mornings, and waiver wire. Manningham has to be on your waiver wire if he's coming forward this week.
Yeah, he's on there. He's towards the bottom of the list. But he's a guy, along with the rest of the San Francisco 49ers, going to benefit greatly from Michael Crabtree being there. You'd think it's going to take away from his touches. But, it's going to help having that attention focused on Crabtree, having a real threat there. Bolden, sure, a good receiver. Not really a threat to other teams. Manningham gets on there, and I think Crabtree coming back takes some attention away from him and allows him to make those big catches that we saw him make in New York.
What about some other guys maybe that we're going to feature this week for waiver wire pickups?
For those wondering, Andre Brown is still under 50% owned. I don't know how, but he's out there. Go and get him, please. Just talking about Michael Crabtree. He's 20% owned. Probably going to be back this week or next. Percy Harvin, he is back next week. He's still out there in quite a few leagues. And that Case Keenum, I think that's the real deal. He came into the week being known as the guy who threw to Andre Johnson. He threw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. I picked him up too. Finally, a quarterback there who can spread the ball around and make everybody productive. Riley Cooper, he's the real deal. A lot of people laughed at that one big week, thought that was going to happen. He's worth a grab. Jericho Cotchery, another guy who had a big week. We all had a good laugh about it. But then went out there, had another touchdown yesterday. Maybe worth the pickup if you're that desperate. Ben Tate, he's number 1 in Houston. Pick him up. Dennis Johnson, now the number 2 in Houston. We all know Ben Tate's an injury concern most weeks. Dennis Johnson could be a safety net there. And Rashad Jennings, as long as Darren McFadden's out, you want to have Rashad Jennings starting. There's no doubt that he's almost more productive than Darren McFadden is.
So I don't know if Tavon Austin would be included in that or not, because really we drafted this guy. We thought he looked good in college, real good, and we saw a little bit of that yesterday. That speed, that explosiveness, 3 TDs. Obviously, 1 was a punt return. Do we believe in Tavon Austin now? Because most of us probably dropped him.
Right, I had him in a couple
keeper
of spots, and I let him go for sure. And yeah, you want Tavon Austin on your roster. I think he's going to be in this piece because he's probably owned in more leagues or unowned in more leagues than not. You want him on your roster. You're not obviously counting on 2 scores every week from him. He had 138 yards this week on those 2 catches. Those were his only 2 catches. Great plays, got great separation on different routes. One a little go route, he takes one cut, gets to the outside.
Gone.
Yep, next time he's running that slant route across the middle, he comes wide open, he creates huge separation, makes a nice move on a corner. So he's got ball skills. Saw it on the punt return too. We knew it coming into the season. What we didn't see was Brian Schottenheimer getting him involved. Now this week, I think he played 27% of their offensive snaps, like a really low number. Saw 3 targets, made 2 catches. So yes, we're going to roster Tavon Austin, I think, but I'm still not starting him week in and week out based on this performance because you've really got to see him get those consistent looks before you can believe in him. But let's get him in our lineups for sure.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. You hit it on the nail on the head there. Tavon Austin, I can't trust him really. 3 touches, 3 touchdowns, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, took it to the house. You just can't rely on that. And I think you nailed it there. Sometimes, it seemed like he was a bit in the coach's doghouse a little bit. And the only way to get out is impress. And if you see Schottenheimer use this guy a bit more, then that's the only way you can start Tavon Austin. But I think right now you can almost use him as a little trade bait because some people get attracted to that kind of style of touchdowns. But for me, with St. Louis and the way they played the past couple of weeks, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah, I'm worried about Tavon Austin. I don't know if I'm taking a flyer on him unless I'm in a keeper's league. Because if they do start to use him the way he should be used.
This is a guy, I owned him nearly across the board after the draft. Started him week 1 with confidence, got nothing out of it. Week 2, he goes off against the Falcons, 2 touchdowns that game. I think he has to be a must-start week 3. Start him. No, had several straight weeks of sub 1 point. Just absolutely garbage start. Goes off again last week. Let's keep in mind, only 2 catches. Sure, he broke them both for big touchdowns. But it was just 2. This guy isn't a focal point yet and won't be under Kellen Clemens, let's face it.
And I'm putting that on Brian Schottenheimer more than anything else. But, I mean, we got to like that we saw him finding 2 nice routes for us and creative ways to get him the ball. Certainly, if I start seeing that in week 11 and beyond, then he's a guy you can have a little bit of faith in, maybe even when your fantasy playoffs come around. But right now, it's a wait-and-see proposition for sure.
Yeah, I think you look at Brian Schottenheimer, like you said, you got to get touches. When I kind of compare a little bit to T.Y. Hilton, one of my favorite players. Sign me up, King Sweet, all of it. I want it, Hilton. This guy is the man. It was unfortunate for Hilton. I was pretty hard on Pep Hamilton, the new offensive coordinator for the Colts this season. It's kind of unfortunate that it's kind of taken a Reggie Wayne injury to really showcase T.Y. Hilton's skills. I know the Colts had a bad week, but T.Y. didn't. He put close to 130-plus yards. Because this guy, he shows how dynamic a playmaker this guy is, and now he's playing all over the field. When Reggie Wayne was involved, they were doing the 2 tight end sets. He wasn't really that involved in the offense, and with Tavon, it's kind of a similar story. This guy needs the ball in his hands because we see how electric he is, but we won't be able to see that until the coaching staff implements it.
Sure, but what you do like about T.Y. Hilton this week, and maybe some of the volume is because they trailed that game right from the jump, but you like that he got himself into the game, into fantasy relevance without getting into the end zone. Picked up, I think, 9 targets, 7 catches, and those 130 yards. You like Hilton because he's useful even when he's not scoring right now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that. You do a touches and targets piece. Is there any guys out there that stood out to you, like out of the norm? I know we talked about Jeffrey. And, Pierre Garçon leads the league in targets, and he had another good day, so that's kind of expected with him. But any guys that jump out to you?
What jumped out to me was actually Keenan Allen this week on the other side of things. We come into that game, San Diego's playing against Denver. That's a game where we think they're going to have to pass the ball all day. They run the ball with Ryan Matthews, 14 carries after he had 7 the week before. Can't make any sense of that. Can't make any sense of the use of Keenan Allen. Like, they got behind in that game in the second half, and your guy Keenan Allen had just 5 targets, 4 catches. Moral of the story there is let's not get too down on him because he has been leading the Chargers in targets moving forward, weeks behind, but moving forward, want to see that number come up a bit. I was just real surprised about it against the Broncos this week. Otherwise, we talked about a lot of the backs. We talked about C.J. Spiller splitting time with Fred Jackson, seeing fewer opportunities. We talked about Ellington Those things are troubling to me because you want to see guys that are getting lots of work before you're putting faith in them to get them in your lineup. One guy that gets a lot of work, Le'Veon Bell. This guy had 25 touches this week, carried 20 times for 57 yards, somewhere in that range. I talked about in my review from the weekend about naming a line after him. We're going to call it the Le'Veon line, like the Mendoza line in baseball. And that's that line that you see from a fantasy star who gets enough value or volume to make him valuable. So, yeah, 25 touches, he gets a couple of receptions, he scores a touchdown. We're all jazzed on Bell, but he's not doing it real efficiently. I think we gotta worry about that Le'Veon line because when he's not getting into the end zone, it can be trouble.
What about any other ones that jump down in your rankings? Like, do you even bump down Keenan Allen because of the performance? Like,
No, you're not worried about
You're not
that.
worried about it.
What I'm worried about is that I ranked him 5th this week, anticipating a much higher workload, but we're not stressed about those 5 targets he got. Clearly that was a game plan thing, and we know that they like to get him involved. I'm sensing you're trying to get me to talk about somebody here.
no,
I got to add in. I'm slightly worried about Keenan Allen. Sometimes you see that from a rookie. They bust out with a couple of huge performances, but now this guy has the attention of the league now, and maybe he didn't see all this attention, and now suddenly he is. When you face a top secondary, Keenan Allen, not a great start for me.
Yo, 3 games out of 4 with 100 total yards, or 100 receiving yards and a touchdown. I'm not that stressed about him. We didn't see a lot of balls go elsewhere, right? We didn't see the balls go to Vincent Brown or anybody like that. They just weren't throwing it a whole lot. One guy I tell you you're not excited about, despite the fact that he led the Buffalo Bills in receiving this week and in targets, I think it's Chris Bragg. Scores a touchdown, 25 yards receiving, 6 targets out of nowhere. I know Stevie Johnson's out of the game. Please don't go out there and action Bragg.
I know our boy here, Mikey, he likes to give awards out. He likes to the best fantasy performers out there. Any guys come to your head? I know your guy Desi. Should we be worried about Des Bryant? I didn't even notice him last night.
Yeah, just chalk that one up as one of those forget about it weeks. There's a lot of strange things happen this week. We discussed that. But game ball, you have to give it to Drew Brees. My number 1 first-round pick, Drew Brees. This guy is unbelievable. 4 TDs, 390 yards. I mean, just incredible. And the dud, I kind of give it to Tony Romo and Des Bryant. That was a big game. That was a must-win game, and they did not perform.
All right, so let's talk about tonight because all the talk heading into this Monday night game between Tampa Bay and Miami has been about the Dolphins, but it hasn't been about their play on the field. Of course, it's been about their play off the field. Incognito, not around anymore. Barton, not around anymore. And this is a team that Tannehill, he's been sacked at least 3 times in 7 of 8 games. He's been sacked with league high 35 times. So are we worried about Tannehill tonight? He's going to take a pounding?
I'm pretty worried about it. I was talking to some people before the game, and I think Tampa Bay is going to win this ball game. I like what I've seen from the rookies. Talk about fantasy stuff. Mike James, season high career high, 158 rushing yards last week. He even threw for a touchdown. Second to all, Mike Glennon. Not a guy you really want to start, but you got to get the job done. But another rookie, Timothy Wright, the tight end. This guy is a hybrid guy. He got the moves, and he's a pretty strong tight end play for me. I have him in a couple lineups. I like what I've seen from him.
And ever since Glennon's been in, Wright has been noticeable.
He absolutely has. And Vincent Jackson's been getting a lot of work, too. Now, he didn't see a lot last week, but speaking of those touch and targets trends, heading into that, he was picking up somewhere in the range of 15 a game with Glennon. So I think he's going to get a lot of looks tonight against the Miami secondary. I like him right in that 6, 7, 8 range of receivers where I had him ranked coming into the week. I think he's in for a good game. Mike Wallace a little less so because of that pressure that we have to assume the Bucs are going to get on Tannehill. He's already the most sacked guy, so maybe a change in that offensive line is a little better, but Incognito and Martin are getting snaps for a reason, so we got to figure that they're going to get after the quarterback this week. Really don't like Mike Wallace because he's going to see a lot of Darrelle Revis, and his quarterback's not going to have time to let those deep routes develop. Keep an eye on Rashard Matthews. He might see some stuff underneath if he and Hartline are being covered. And then there's Lamar Miller. And again, he's now running behind an O-line that's without a couple of guys that were key players in it just 2 weeks ago. So
and he's looked good.
He's looked good
the past couple of weeks.
He's getting a lot of work. He's gotten 20 touches consecutive games, and maybe he's going to see them again. I think that kind of represents a change in philosophy. But hey, man, if you got nobody to run behind, I don't care how many touches you get.
Yeah, so a big game for the Dolphins, really. They win. They're 5-4. They're tied for that second wildcard spot in the AFC with the Jets, which is a surprise as well. So, do we like the Bucs though to finally get a win here tonight, or are they going to go 0-9?
I pick them to get a win. I think there's just too much distraction. I read a little piece today about how Miami seems to think that this has galvanized their locker room, but I can't imagine as a guy sitting in there and feeling too good. And I think the coaching staff's been a little bit distracted by all the stuff they're having to deal with. So, yeah, not Greg Schiano brings his own distractions, I guess I should mention. But I'd like the Bucs to break out of it tonight, pick up a win here on Monday night, and win me a few dollars while they're at it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. They're going to be like the Jaguars, get off the schneid. I really like this week. I'm very curious to see how Lamar Miller does this week without those offensive linemen. I'm not sure he has a crazy good game, and they're going to need it to win. So I'm with the Bucs.
I tell you what, though, if he does get those 20 touches and he has a nice game, then you can really get behind Lamar Miller because he has had a couple of nice weeks. If he can beat the circumstances and put up a nice number, you got to like him.
My original pick was Miami, but if Jacksonville Jaguars can win a game, literally anyone can win a game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers take this one.
Yeah. 2 teams off the schneid this week. We're going to see KC go to Denver next week. Maybe we're without an undefeated team as well.
Yeah, people's survivor pool's taking a hit this week. I know a bunch of them that I was in done now with that. The Colts lost, obviously, and with the Titans lost as well. So that pretty much wraps everything up here for tonight. We want to thank all you guys for coming inside the locker room, having a chat here again. We're at Sharks Club in Toronto. They got great deals on here on Monday nights. If you're around and you're able to check it out, I know there's a few across the country. $3.99 drinks. There you go. Just got one 38-cent wings. Of course, you're going to play the football game. They usually have some jerseys, some great prizes to give away, some footballs, some keychains. It's good stuff. So we'll do it again here next Monday. You got a touches and targets piece coming on the website.
I do, and one thing I want to look at this week is actually, it's a new defensive metric I've been looking at, and I haven't seen it anywhere. I hope to get a piece up there about fantasy points allowed per touch. We look a lot about how many points a defense gives up per game to running backs, and that's a very telling thing, of course, right? You can make some projections based on that. But if we start to look at relative points allowed per touch to an opposing RB, and we can project 25 touches for a guy like Le'Veon, well, you can get a better sense of how he factors in relative value to maybe CJ Spiller with 15 touches against a defense that gives up a handful more points per touch. So I'm going to try to look at that. I'm doing the math right now. We'll let you know how the numbers look later in the week.
So we got that. We'll have Mike Yo's notes. We'll have a waiver wire piece Tuesday. The injury read as well is going to have a little injury report for you by weekend's time for kickoff. So again, I'm Chris Neal alongside Mike Omelette, Eston McLaren, Sean Collins, Locker Room Fantasy Sports. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.